Hello my dear friends, you're in the MilitarySummary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the Ukrainian conflict. During the previous night we received lots of very important updates that most likely would change the conflict, the nature of the conflict on the territory of Ukraine itself. So let's discuss everything in details, and first let's talk about the most northern part of the Russian Federation. Yesterday in the evening, several sources published these pictures, and here we can see something flying over the territory of Russia. And the different sources claim that something was launched from the Plesets cosmodrome. So here we can see something flying over the territory of Russia, and the sources and different authors and different experts were guessing what exactly the Russians launched. Later, more precisely during the morning of the 24th of March of 2026, the Russian sources published this video with additional note. So this is probably the most important event of 2026. Let's discuss this video in details. The first satellites of the Bureau 1440 targeted communication group are in orbit. On March 23rd at 8 p.m. 24 minutes, the first batch launch of 16 Bureau 1440 spacecraft took place. After reaching the reference orbit, the satellites successfully separated from the carrier rocket and were taken under the control of the Bureau 1440 Control Center. The next steps include checking on the onboard systems and moving to the target orbit. The launch of the first devices of the target group marks the transition from experiments to the creation of a communication service. The Bureau 1440 team has completed this pass in 1000 days, which is the time between the launch of experimental and serial satellites. Ahead are dozens of launches and hundreds of Russian low-orbit satellites for a communication service with global coverage. So here you can see how the Russians launched the Starlink analog, and now the Russians in days, maybe in weeks, in months, will be able to restore the internet connection on the territory of Ukraine without any problems, without any issues, and without any probably resistance from the Ukrainian side. Later we received additional picture about the situation. Here we can see the territory over Alaska. A Russian satellite was spotted with a photo taken from a surveillance camera installed in Alaska. So this is the first group of Russian satellites that in the future will provide the internet connection covering the entire planet, and this is once again the Starlink analog. Obviously the Russians still need days, weeks or months before they will be able to concentrate a critical mass of satellites over the low orbits of the Earth, and only then they will be able to provide 100% quality internet connection through the territory of Ukraine. But that was the first step. The Russians will continue sending more and more satellites, and I think that probably in 2, 3, 4, 5 months the Russians will be able to establish a strong internet connection through the entire territory of Ukraine without any possibilities from the Ukrainian side to intercept this communication. So which means that the Russians in coming 6 months most likely will return to attacks using drones and using missiles deep inside of the territory of Ukraine without any problems from any equipment from the Ukrainian side, with online mode attacks when operators will be able to run drones deep inside of the territory of Ukraine and to attack objects they managed to find in online mode. So this is a very dangerous situation. We saw something like this in the beginning of 2026 and in the late 2025 when the Russians using the Starlink systems were attacking the territory of Ukraine without any problems. Later the Ukrainians cut off the Russians from the Starlink internet, and we see how this situation affected the Russian capabilities. Basically they stopped on the many front lines, and furthermore the Ukrainians managed to counterattack in the Zaporozhye direction and to restore control over huge territories. So this is the situation, and now we see that the Russians began this very difficult and probably sometimes even very slow process of recovering. So now let's discuss a few more updates and a few more interesting things that happened during the previous night. According to information we have, the Russians attacked the territory Ukraine with hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles. This picture was published this morning by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see what kind of territories, what territories the Russians were attacking, and what kind of arms the Russians were using for these purposes. The Russians, as you can see, used hundreds of drones. The Russians attacked were trying to attack the Kiev region. The Russians were trying to attack the western parts of Ukraine. The Russians attacked many positions along the line of combat contact. The Russians attacked the Poltava region, the Sumy region, and the Kharkiv region. The Russians were using drones, Ha-101 cruise missiles, and the Russians use Iskander missiles. So as for the pro-Ukrainian sources, this morning they published the details and the statistics of air defense, of their air defense forces. The Ukrainians are saying that the Russians used 426 air vehicles and they managed to destroy 390 targets. I would like to remind you that the Russians carried out this retaliatory strike yesterday. If you remember, the Ukrainians attacked the city of Primorsk, more precisely this object of energy infrastructure, and as a result of that attack, as you can see, lots of facilities, reservoirs, fuel reservoirs of the armed forces of Russia were damaged and probably even destroyed. And so that is why the Russians struck back, and we see what is happening today on the territory of Ukraine. For example, when talking about the city of Primorsk, this morning we received another video, and here we can see that the situation is still very difficult. We see that there is a fire still, and we see that the Russians still haven't managed to stabilize the situation in this area. So the Russians struck back, and the Russians were attacking objects of energy infrastructure, but it seems that the most important objects of energy infrastructure that the Russians were trying to target were located in the western parts of Ukraine. So if you take a look at this picture, you might see that lots of lines were moving in the western direction through the city of Odessa and Kherson, further in the direction of the city of Ivano-Frankovsk. Very difficult to understand what exactly the Russians were attacking. Most likely the Russians were trying to hit or to damage the Burstynska power station, because when talking about this picture, we can see that both drones and missiles managed to get this territory, but very difficult to say whether the Russians damaged or destroyed this power station, because we haven't received anything that can confirm that that explosions were recorded in this area. We just know that the missiles and drones were heading in this area, but we don't know for sure whether they managed to hit targets or not. So the Russians sent several waves of vehicles in this direction. First, the Russians launched a significant number of drones, and this is the map where basically on the 1 a.m. of the 24th of March of 2026, a batch of drones were heading in the northwestern direction. So here we can see that these drones managed to get this territory. Lots of drones reached this part of Ukraine, and they were flying over this Burstyn power station, or maybe these drones were flying over this western Ukrainian substation, the most important substation in Ukraine that supports Ukraine with electricity from the European countries. And when the Russians probably realized that the situation was secured, they began attacking this territory with cruise missiles. But cruise missiles haven't managed to pass through the Vinnytsia region. The cruise missiles of Ha-101 type were destroyed somewhere here. So first, the Russians secured the area with drones, with significant number of drones. They launched these drones from the Kherson direction. They managed to get this territory, and then the Russian drones began flying over the territory. And when the Russians probably realized that the pass is safe, they launched cruise missiles using the same routes of attack, but these cruise missiles were destroyed somewhere over the Vinnytsia region. So which means that these cruise missiles haven't managed to get the targets in the southwestern parts of Ukraine. Another important update is that the Russians dealt significant damage to the city of Poltava. Overnight, lots of pictures and lots of videos were published from this area. As you can see, the Russians destroyed some object of a military facility, according to pro-Russian sources. Some constructions were destroyed. As you can see, some buildings were damaged on the territory of the city of Poltava itself. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians attacked the city of Shostka. So this city is located in the northern parts of the Sumy region, and here we can see the territory that was attacked by Russians, and here we can see fire anomalies from this area. So the Russians probably destroyed or tried to destroy or damage these facilities. Most likely the Ukrainians use these facilities for drone production, because the city of Shostka is located almost in the most northern parts of the Sumy region, and this is exactly the territory that Ukrainians used to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia, in the direction of the city of Moscow itself, or probably even further in the direction of the city of St. Petersburg. So the Russians, that is why, attacked this territory with significant number of drones. Furthermore, we have reports that the Russians attacked the city of Zaporozhye. According to information we have, the Russians attacked some truck station, and lots of trucks, as you can see, were damaged or even destroyed. This video was published this morning, and here we can see already the consequences of that attack. Here we can see the video published during the night, explosions, videos of attacks from the Russian side. Here we can see this truck station before attack, and here we can see several trucks were damaged as a result of Russian Guerrilla attacks, and here we can see a gas station that was also attacked by the Russians. So this is obviously not an object of energy or infrastructure or something like this. It's just a truck station that most likely the Ukrainians were using to bring or to move cargoes from one side of Ukraine to another. So as you can see, the situation is becoming very difficult for Ukraine. Obviously, if the Russians are able to restore the internet connection within the next 3, 4, or 5 months, the Russians won't risk. They will try to save the progress they have currently along the line of combat contact, and they will wait when they get good connections, the good internet connection, and as soon as they have one, they will begin probably their major offensive operation. But once again, the situation before the Russians are able to establish strong internet connection with their new satellite group may take place up to 6 or even more months. So it's very difficult to understand what the Russians are going to do during this period of time. Probably they will attack, but I'm not sure that they will carry out significant offensive operations or major offensive operation if it's just several months to wait before they receive a normal internet connection. But anyway, during the previous 24 hours, we received some videos, some updates. According to different sources, the Russians are keeping advancing in the Zaporozhye direction. The Russians are not moving very fast. They're just improving their positions along the line of combat contact. And during the previous night, we received lots of videos that confirm the current line of combat contact. For example, in this video, we can see how Ukrainians were attacking the city of Ternovat, at least its southwestern part. This point and this video confirms that the Russians have a strong control, at least over the southwestern part of the settlement. I would like to remind you that according to many pro-Ukrainian sources, the settlement of Ternovat is located under complete control of the armed forces of Ukraine, but we received videos that confirm completely the opposite thing. Furthermore, the Russians continue improving positions in the area of the settlement of Grishna. These are the changes on the ground between the dates. The Russians improved their positions to the north of the settlement. We came to this conclusion based on the video that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources. Here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation in these farms and barracks. The Russians improved their positions, and as we can see, the Russians are keeping advancing further in the direction of the settlement by the name of Nova Alexandriivka. As for the Konstantinovka direction, during the previous night we haven't received anything special. I would like to remind you that yesterday the Russians, according to different sources, managed to improve their position significantly in the southern parts of the city, and today we received a video where we can see how Russians were bombing positions of the armored forces of Ukraine further in the direction of the central part of the city of Konstantinovka, which means that maybe the Russians are trying to pin down the positions of the armored forces of Ukraine before beginning of another offensive operation, of another wave or another round of offensive operation in the southern parts of the city. So the clashes for the city of Konstantinovka continue. Another important video is coming from the Slaviansk direction. Today several sources published this picture, and according to this picture, one of the most important supply lines of the armored forces of Ukraine along the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal and the river of Seversky Donetsk was destroyed. We're talking about this territory. If we increase the numbers of updates since the beginning of March, we'll see lots of videos exactly from this area, and every single video shows how the Ukrainians were trying to redeploy their forces from one bank of the river of Seversky Donetsk to another with the purpose to reinforce positions of the armored forces of Ukraine on the territory of the city of Liman. So we have lots of videos and lots of destroyed vehicles of the armored forces of Ukraine, but the Russians most likely decided to destroy the bridge completely because it seems that the Russians are entering the final and decisive phase of the battle for the city of Liman, when the city itself doesn't have supply and support, or doesn't have good quality of supply and support from the city of Slaviansk. In coming days, we believe we'll see additional changes in this area. Now let's talk about the northern directions. Just before we started making the video, several sources, pro-Russian sources, including the group of forces north, stated that the Russians, as a result of clashes, established complete control over the settlement by the name of Peshane. Before the next video, we will adjust the map and we will color the territory by adding additional territory like this under complete control of the armored forces of the Russian Federation. The Russians, as we can see, are keeping advancing further in the most northeastern direction of the Kharkiv region. Now let's discuss the situation in the Middle East. I would like to remind you that several days ago, the President of the United States of America issued an ultimatum to the Iranians, and the President of the United States of America gave the Iranians 48 hours to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. But the most important thing, that's a day after, the President of the United States of America canceled his first position, and he announced a 5 days ceasefire. So the United States of America promised not to attack the energy infrastructure of Iran during the next 5 days, and he said that the United States of America and the Iranians are about to sign an agreement. Later, the President of the United States of America made several statements. We have major points of agreement and we both want to make a deal. We'll likely talk today, possibly by phone, but I would like to point attention that conversation between the Iranians and the President of the United States of America didn't take place. Later we have report, if these talks go well and you reach a ceasefire agreement with Iran, do you believe Israel will abide by that agreement? I think Israel will be very happy with what we have. I think they will be very happy. That was also emphasized by the President of the United States of America. Also, he added that the price of oil will drop like a rock as soon as the deal is done. I guess it already is today. So I would like to remind you that yesterday, after the President of the United States of America announced that oil price, that's about this 5 day ceasefire, the oil prices dropped for 10% or something like this, and currently they are on the level of $90 per barrel. We're talking about the WTI. Another important thing about this negotiation process and all these things, that's according to information we have, by this Friday, the forces, the 31st Marine Group is going to arrive in the area of Middle East, and as you can see, the arrival of this group has the same date as the arrival as the ceasefire that was announced by the President of the United States of America. So U.S. Marine slated to arrive in the Middle East on Friday, and during the same period of time, the ceasefire announced by the President of the United States of America expires. So as you can see, as we discussed in the previous videos, most likely this is the situation, this is the point. So there is no need to press and to push oil markets for the President of the United States of America. It's better to wait when the Marine groups arrive, and when Marine group arrives, then most likely the United States of America will carry out a landing operation with the purpose to establish complete control over the Kharkiv Island or over the territory to the north of the Strait of Hormuz, with the purpose to unblock this territory. And after this, and when it happens, most likely the United States of America will announce its victory. The sources are saying that the US wants to end the war within Iran by April 9th, but it's very difficult to say whether it's going to happen. The Pentagon is considering sending 3,000 rapid response paratroopers, 82nd Airborne, to support possible U.S. operation in Iran, potentially to seize Kharkiv Island. So there are several options. The United States of America may just try to establish complete control over the Kharkiv Island, and this control over this island will block the export of oil from the Iranian side, and starting from this very moment, they will begin suffering huge losses. At the same time, we continue receiving reports that several vessels and tankers managed to cross the Strait of Hormuz. For example, during the previous 24 hours, a Chinese-owned feeder container ship has become the first vessel with confirmed mainland Chinese ownership for passage through the Strait of Hormuz, transiting via so-called safe shipping corridor near Tehran's Larak Island. At the same time, and despite the fact that the United States of America announced ceasefire, we continue receiving updates of how the coalitions continued bombing and attacking the territory of Iran military facilities and objects of military infrastructure with Tomahawk missiles and with aviation. During the night, we received lots of videos on this matter. Explosions, we received the different explosions through the territory of Iran. Some launching sites were attacked, some ballistic missile systems were attacked as well. So we see that nobody is going to stop this conflict. We just see that both the coalitions and the Iranians are regrouping before the next stage of escalation that most likely will start this Friday. And that's it for the short video. The Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.